I'm going to walk through why the Samsung 42-inch class OLED S90H might be the right choice for you, and where it could end up feeling like a miss. If you're on the fence because you've seen a lot of hype about OLED and AI but you're not sure how those buzzwords translate into everyday watching, this review is meant to cut through the noise. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the hesitation most people feel isn't about the brand. Samsung is a household name but about the balance between a premium picture experience and the practical realities of a typical living space. A 42-inch screen sits in a sweet spot for apartments, dorm rooms, or a bedroom media corner, yet it's large enough to feel immersive when you sit close. The real question is whether the technology inside that size justifies the cost, especially when you compare it to a 55-inch LED that's often on sale. I spent a few days setting this TV up in a sunlit kitchen and then moving it to a darker home theater nook, and I'll break down how it behaved in each scenario. Unboxing and setup were straightforward. The stand is slim, and the TV mounts easily on a standard VESA bracket if you prefer a wall hang. The first thing you notice is the glare-free OLED panel. Samsung's marketing calls it a matte surface that diffuses ambient light, and in practice it does a decent job of reducing reflections from the kitchen windows. When I was making coffee in the morning, the picture stayed readable even with the blinds partially drawn. In the dedicated media room, the panel delivered the deep, inky blacks you expect from OLED shadows held detail, and the HDR Plus processing brought out highlight nuance without blooming. The AI side of things is where Samsung tries to differentiate this model. The NQ4 AI Gen3 Processor is the brain that drives the 4K AI Upscaling Pro and the AI Motion Enhancer Pro. I tested the upscaling by throwing a classic 720p sitcom episode onto the TV via a streaming app. Within seconds the image looked noticeably sharper, edges were smoother, and color grading seemed richer, almost as if the source had been shot in higher resolution. Sports Night showed the motion enhancer in action. Fast-moving basketball plays stayed clear, with minimal ghosting. The frame interpolation is subtle, so you don't get the soap opera effect that some people dislike, but the motion feels smoother than a typical 60Hz LED. Gaming is another area the S90H tries to own, thanks to the Ultimate Gaming Pack. I connected my PlayStation 5 and enabled the game mode. Input lag dropped to a level that felt responsive, and the TV's variable refresh rate synced without any visible tearing. The low-latency pipeline is a real benefit if you're competitive on titles like Call of Duty or FIFA. However, there's a trade-off. The TV only offers one HDMI 2.1 port, so if you have a console, a Blu-ray player, and a soundbar all needing that bandwidth, you'll need an external switch or settle for lower refresh rates on one device. Alexa built-in works as advertised. I could ask for the weather, control smart lights, or launch Netflix hands-free. The voice response is quick, and the integration with Samsung's Smart Hub feels tighter than a generic Bluetooth speaker. That said, the remote still carries most of the daily navigation weight, and the on-screen menus can be a little dense if you're not already familiar with Samsung's UI. Now, who should walk away from this TV? If you live in a space where a 42-inch screen fills your primary viewing distance, you'll likely appreciate the OLED contrast and the AI-driven upscaling. It's a solid pick for cinephiles who want true black levels without committing to a larger, more expensive panel. The TV also shines for gamers who value low input lag and don't mind juggling a single HDMI 2.1 connection. Families that watch a lot of mixed-quality content, old movies, streaming series, sports will notice the upscaling and motion handling on a regular basis. On the other side, if your room is bathed in direct sunlight for most of the day, even the glare-free coating can struggle to compete with the brightness of high-end QLEDs. In that environment you might see a slight washout in peak highlights, which is something to keep in mind if you primarily watch HDR movies in a bright living room. The price point is another consideration. You're paying a premium for OLED technology in a relatively small size, so if you're on a tight budget or you're